Why is the Family Foundation suing Richmond City Council? Just one hint, Planned Parenthood. We'll bring you the latest update on all of that. Plus, school boards continue to be the flashpoint in the ongoing battle to push transgender ideology into the classrooms and girls' sports. We have the latest on what's happening in your school districts. Welcome to Speak Up Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Well, welcome, everybody. Glad to have you with us for Speak Up Virginia. You know, we have some great updates for you on what our team is doing to strengthen and support people that have a heart for speaking up for life and parental rights in their communities. So just to start out, Victoria, bring us up to date. What's happening with this outrageous decision from the City Council to basically sell a $1.2 million property for a token value of $10? And that was a unanimous vote, by the way.
Yeah, we did mention this on the show before, but there is a great update, which is that our Founding Freedoms Law Center is actually representing a plaintiff and suing the City of Richmond. We told them this would happen, and sure enough, it has. So what is going forward is Dr. Sheila Fury has a psychiatry practice, and she is going to be representative of, I think, lots of businesses that would have liked a shot at bidding on this building. But the bottom line is they're boxed out of the process. So, you know, of course, our interest in this is multi-pronged. It is one, because we don't want to see another abortion center. And certainly we would, you know, be remiss to not say that that's a major motivator for us. But also government transparency and just a government being accountable for the stewardship of tax dollars. And so they need to do this right, even if they do it in a direction that we wouldn't approve. No pet projects.
Now, tell us a little bit about what she does and why this building would have been valuable for her.
Yeah, she has a great practice. So she deals with brain injury, and particularly also kids with autism, kids and adults actually, autism or dyslexia or any kind of brain trauma. And so her services are really needed. They're growing, and this is the city is just a great place to be able to be centrally located for folks to be able to be serviced by her practice. So, she should have had a shot. Yeah. Certainly if they're going to give it away for $10, I think there's a lot of people that would pay more than $10 for a building. Yeah,
and she has said there's been an increasing need in Richmond for the kind of services that it's psychiatry, right? That business does, and that's why she actually testified. She testified with a lot of other people at this meeting for, that she didn't get a chance to bid on this property. Instead, the city made this sweetheart deal. Now, it looks like there was something else good happening there that may have gotten kicked out as well, right? Can we talk about that?
This building, it's kind of just a crazy, it just shows you how, I would just say, generally dysfunctional city council is, because essentially this building was a public school. So, for a long time it was a public school, and then the public school system turned it over to the city. And it was, at the time, after they had stopped using it as public school, it was being leased before they turned it over to a prison reentry education organization. And so that group had been in there leasing it, so paying rent, which I think is just fascinating, leasing it. And so then the public school says, we're obviously not going to turn this back into school. We don't need it. They turn it over to the city, and the city kicks out the tenant, so they lose the rent. It then sits empty for 2 years, unused, and then they give it away for $10 to Planned Parenthood.
That's just incredible. So I think there's a good case here. How would you summarize why our Founding Freedoms Law Center decided that this was worth fighting in courts?
Well, again, you've got to have city governments and state governments and follow the law. And, first of all, it's not a blighted property. So under state law, the only way you can undervalue a building is if it's considered a blighted property. And that has not happened. And under city ordinance, they had to have, as a city council, once they got this building, they had to say this is what they call surplus property. And even then, they had to allow open bidding. You don't want pet projects. You don't want government officials to be able to take taxpayer dollars and hand it to their pet project. And so, again, that's the sort of what's at play at the lawsuit, but we don't want to see a sixth abortion center in our city. I mean, this would be number 6. It'd be the third one for Planned Parenthood. And what they're citing is a number of things. First, they're talking about the increase in abortion for out-of-state clientele, women who come from other states in the South that are more restrictive on abortion. So we don't want to be a tourism hub for abortion. That's the most horrifying idea. And I think it's an open admission that this isn't intended to service the city of Richmond. Even if you thought Planned Parenthood had a service to offer, which some of us don't really believe they have a service, but they're not even feigning that this is for the residents. This is because of the increase of out-of-state. So the whole thing is just so awry in what should be going on. And if you just literally go to where this building is, you will see physically in front of you the need for housing, the need for mental health help. I mean, it's just an area that folks are struggling, and the city ought to be collecting the revenue of a renter. They ought to be selling the building outright. And, then it'd be great if they sold it to an entity that could actually provide some kind of private services.
Sadly, this is what a death culture looks like when we put this ahead of helping the people around us. But, we mentioned people actually coming out and pleading with the city council to not do this. So I thought I would just show a clip of some of the news coverage from that. So let's just watch that for just a minute.
It's been mixed views on whether this new facility will be beneficial for everyone in Richmond.
I've got no quarrel with Planned Parenthood. But I understand their budget is plus $1 million annually. And you're going to give away for $10?
That's just one of many voices from last night's Richmond City Council meeting. The board unanimously approved a third Planned Parenthood facility to be built on the Northside property near Chamberlain Avenue, selling the property for just $10. Officials say the $6 million building will not only provide family planning, but also serve as primary care and cancer screenings for residents.
Virginia essentially is the last state in the South that offers this sort of care. And now to have these options and opportunities in the city of Richmond puts us in a class of our own.
But not everyone feels it's necessary.
You can't give a sweetheart deal to a billion-dollar corporation just because you like them. You actually have to give other people in the city an opportunity to bid as well.
Abortion is not health care. It damages women emotionally, physically, psychologically, and it kills an innocent life.
According to the Virginia League for Planned Parenthood, the decision comes at a time where they've not only seen a 30% rise of clients coming out of state since the Dobbs decision, but also an 85% increase in clinician-provided abortions since 2020.
Okay, it's really interesting that there were people in there, like that guy at the very beginning, who were, they were saying, we don't even necessarily have an issue with Planned Parenthood. We just don't think the city should be handling it like this.
Yes, you don't have to be pro-life to be offended by what the city is doing. And I think there are a lot of people, because it's being picked up widely on the news channels, and I don't think they are necessarily in our position on the life issue in many cases. But there's a real sense that this is one of, and it really is a reputation of the city of Richmond. This is one of a million ways that they mismanage money. I mean, they have a long and storied history of being dysfunctional, if not corrupt, right?
Okay,
so
since you brought that up,
yes.
I do have to mention that the day that you and Josh, our legal counsel, did the press conference on this lawsuit, Mayor Stoney was also having a press conference about, wasn't he trying to address unaccountability?
Yes,
ironically?
people were having issue with other financial issues of the city. And so literally across the street from our press conference is also his press conference.
At the same time.
At the same time. And he's talking about, no, you can't criticize us. And I mean, it was actually, his press conference was actually rather comical, because it's very clear they're not being fully transparent. They kind of stopped using the transparency system where people can even look to see where the money is going. And I mean, it's just...
Okay, and in this interview clip that we just played, we see Mayor Stoney making the case for this abortion clinic by saying that Richmond should be in a class of its own. So I guess supporting the abortion industry definitely puts us in a type of class of our own.
Yes, and my favorite is in one of the interviews he calls us an extremist organization. And I also love that he tries to claim, that Planned Parenthood is more than abortion in one of the interviews. Now, all the interviews are a little different, but like what part they show. But literally, I just sit there and say, yes, they also, in my head, I'm thinking, yes, they also do puberty blocking for minors. We don't want that either, right? So whatever you consider care, none of it is good for our city.
Okay, well, let's just hit real quick the justification that Planned Parenthood was also giving in that clip for why this should be done. I'll just throw out a couple of numbers here. Like a 30% rise in people coming from out of state for abortions, and then an 85% increase in what they call clinical abortions.
Yeah, this is pretty devastating. And we are hearing numbers that are just absolutely tragic in Virginia around abortion because, again, we're the ones not protecting human life, where Tennessee and all the states, both to a little bit to our west and to our south, are doing a much better job. But again, I think it's fascinating that they're acknowledging this isn't even about Virginia. I mean, they're literally acknowledging, like, this is so we can profit from the vulnerability and the exploitation and the lies that are given to women in other states.
Of people coming into the state, not even, as you said, the people right around there that actually need help.
Correct. Yeah. Because FYI, I hate to say it, there are abortion centers very close by for the people that are around them. Good point. Sadly, that horrible option is already being presented to that area. And, the point I was trying to make with the media is these aren't the organizations presenting women hope. They aren't the ones handing them diapers, finding them housing when they find themselves in an unplanned pregnancy and saying, yeah, you can be a mom and achieve your dreams. The abortion industry is the exact opposite of what we want, which is hope-providing, support-giving entities to these women. And the fact that the city thinks that that's the solution just tells you why a lot of things are not right in the city of Richmond.
That's
because
what
that's
I mean
your mentality.
when I say death culture instead of hope.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, shifting topics here, I did also want to address how school boards continue to be a major flashpoint almost every week now, if you just look at the news headlines, when it comes to these ongoing battles over transgender ideology being pushed into our classrooms, into girls' sports, and then there's this ongoing cultural clash over that, and where do we draw the line with protection of parents' rights, protection of kids in the bathrooms, locker rooms, girls' sports, and that kind of thing. Tell us what your thoughts are on that coming out of last week.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is if people think, well, it's been a year since we've had a change in the transgender guidelines, this is kind of a quieted down issue, they're wrong. It is still in multiple counties are still dealing with, it's going to continue to be an issue until we get statewide policies that protect girls. So literally last week we were, there was an issue in Hanover on this, and then the parents of Chesterfield were speaking out. So we're excited to kind of talk about all that.
Yeah, literally we have members of our team and at the same time.
Yeah, the same time in two different school boards.
Counties. Yeah, because parents there were trying to fight different things.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the tension here in Virginia, as you just alluded to, really is centering around this kind of flashpoint with the Youngkin policies upholding parental rights, which is coming into crossfire with the Biden administration trying to pressure schools to embrace transgender ideology. And they're basically doing that through threat of loss of funding if you don't follow these Biden regulations. So you see that kind of coming to a head in different school districts right here in Virginia. But the encouraging thing in all of this is how parents are speaking up. They are saying, no, this is our family. This is not a federal issue when it comes to our right to protect our child and what's happening at their school during the school day. And so we saw a lot of voices being heard on that in a redemptive way in Chesterfield County with more than 200 parents and citizens coming out. We're going to talk about that more. But I did just want to start first with getting an update on the Hanover County piece of this.
Yeah, so Hanover has actually tried to pass some very good policies around transgender students. And what we have there is that, as you mentioned, the Biden administration is trying to pressure these schools. Left-wing groups like the ACLU are trying to browbeat them and into submission on this point. And so in Hanover, the issue specifically is about the school's refusal to allow a biological boy to play tennis on a girls' sports team. Again, we have this crazy belief that biological boys and girls are different, that they should play in different spaces in sports. And apparently the school board was on board with that. And so basically the school district cited the need to protect fairness in sports. And they also cited Governor Youngkin's policies, and his policies, again,
which they had adopted.
They had adopted them. And they specifically say that, quote, for any athletic program or activity that is separated by sex, the appropriate participation of students shall be determined by their sex rather than their gender or gender identity. So that's what the policy, has been said, and that's what Hanover has endorsed. And then they've got this pushback.
They're trying to comply with that. Because that's what's been put out for state guidance under the Youngkin administration's education department. But, when you read that, I think it sounds like a lot of legalese people. But basically, that wording is giving schools the freedom to protect fairness and safety in girls' sports, right? Essentially.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's just very interesting because that's what's going on. But what's happening in response is the ACLU is trying to wield the Biden administration. They're trying to use this federal effort that the Biden administration has done to reinterpret Title IX, which is basically what they did, giving gender identity special protection, which we know was not as Title IX was written.
Yeah, it's supposed to be sex discrimination.
But they've reinterpreted it and tried to foist this on all the schools. And so they're trying to say that outweighs Virginia's policy.
Yeah. And it really, I just have to point out again, it really is so ironic because, again, Title IX was originally created to, protect against sex discrimination, primarily discrimination against female sports that never had enough resources. And so now we have this situation where it's kind of destroying female sports because you're taking out what makes it different and even jeopardizing safety and that kind of thing. But anyway, it looks like this school board in Hanover really is showing tremendous courage under a lot of pressure to cave on this. And I do think it's important, feel like it's important to point out that we do have tremendous compassion for these families that are going through this on a personal level. We know people personally whose kids are struggling with these gender identity issues, and that's not an easy thing for the family to navigate, right?
No, there's no question that we feel for these families, but we can't lose track of everyone involved, right? So that's what ends up happening is that there's this idea that we have to sort of change things for everyone else as this child struggles. And what ends up happening is unfair or even dangerous situations in sports accommodating the gender confusion. And that's just not good for everybody else that's playing that sport.
There has to be a balance with respecting all the families and students in the school community. And then, of course, coming off the Olympics, we saw how this plays out. Right now this might be at a lower level, but you saw how this plays out when you remove all protection in girls' sports.
And the path between, don't forget, there are kids who are right now playing high school, middle school sports that their goal is to end up at that Olympics. And this unfairness is a real potential block for their path to their greatest outcomes, whether it's scholarships or, or they just really literally run into danger physically because they're girls competing against a male it depends, which sport, how that all plays out, but it's very alarming. So unfortunately, this is what's going on in Hanover, and the latest update is that a federal court ruled that the Hanover School District must let the student play on the girls' team. So this is going to continue through the legal process. So there's never, this is not the end. This is a temporary.
You must let her play till it works itself out.
Yes, exactly. So we will have to keep watching and.
Why do you think this is an important case to watch? Do you feel like this case is going to become significant?
It's just so typical that we just continue to watch as they push and push and push, on the other side. That is as if it makes no difference. I'll tell you, just as a tennis player, I played high school girls tennis, and I actually at night would play against my guy friend because he was just that much better than anybody on my team, and it would make me better. So, to me, when I hear this, I go, yeah. Guess what? A biological guy, just the power, just literally the arm strength. Put Pete Sampras against it's not gonna, and I guess that's an outdated reference. I should use all the current guys, but but my only point is just there's a physical difference, and it shows up in high school, and it shows up as adults, and that whole path of sports. So we just got to continue to, really push to allow women, and we know women's sports are so good for women, for young girls with leadership and just a whole number of things, self-confidence. Sports have been shown to be helpful in the development of a girl also. And so the idea of, yes, it's worth protecting for that purpose, not just for scholarships and Olympic medals.
Well, This is really indicative of what we were seeing at multiple school districts across our state, not only in our state, but across the nation. So I think these kind of cases are going to end up at the Supreme Court probably. So keep your eye on it. We'll keep an eye on it and give you updates. But let me tell you some good news in all this, and that's what's happening in Chesterfield County. So as I mentioned, we had 200 very brave parents and concerned citizens come out last week, turn out right before the school board meeting. I think it's their last school board meeting before the school year officially starts. So it was a significant timing for them to make their voices heard. And this is in Chesterfield County. And this rally was hosted by our Speak Up Chesterfield team. Now, in case you guys haven't heard us talk about this before, we have 6 teams in key regions across the state that are dedicated to speaking up in a redemptive way on life, parental rights, religious freedom. And these are teams comprised of local citizens, parents, people concerned about the life issue that just want to have a powerful impact right where they live in their neighborhood. And we're about to start a 7th team, which we'll tell you about later. But it just shows you the power of people joining their voices together locally. So the parents rallied to speak up for protecting kids in school in a fair and compassionate way in light of these transgender issues. And their point was, this can be done. We can protect every single kid without sacrificing parents' constitutional rights and just the basic need to protect kids in their locker rooms and bathrooms. And, again, this was centering around these model policies that Governor Youngkin had put forward, the parental rights versions. And a lot of schools have already implemented those, but Chesterfield County was dragging its feet. So I'm just going to put some images here on the screen from that rally so you can see the encouraging turnout here. And, we got great coverage from the media, Richmond Times-Dispatch, so there are some photos also from Richmond Times on here.
Yeah, I was just encouraged that it wasn't just parents, that even elected officials came out. So we had Senator Sturdivant, we had Delegate Early, they're sort of the representatives of that area, and they were willing to say, look, these were passed, the administration passed them, they were, they brought up the point that parents matter was a big point in the election. And so it's interesting that these local officials are, they ought to be feeling the electoral heat just from Youngkin being elected and these guys coming into office under that, that they aren't doing anything about it. So I love that they were there. I also loved that there were, that the church was represented. So Pastor Randy Hahn was there and spoke up. He's raised 4 kids in this school system. And I just love that he's somebody who's been in the community, working with the community, and I just for pastors who think somehow that their job is separated from community engagement, I just think Randy modeled that so well. And the Heights Baptist Church came out, and it was great.
That's what is so astounding about the school board basically giving all of these people in their community the silent treatment, because let me just give some more context for this. Back when the Northam administration pushed through these radical policies on transgender issues in schools, the Chesterfield County School District was really quick to implement those.
Like a month to 2 months, and it was done and applied to all the schools.
Yeah. So the parents came out last week and had this big rally and asked the question, why was our school district so quick to rush that in? But then when Governor Youngkin, his education department, revised those policies to put parents back in the driver's seat, it's crickets. It has been more than a year. These parents, as they explained at the press conference, have been showing up at school board meeting after school board meeting, sending emails, asking for personal meetings. Nothing has happened for more than a year. What is going on?
And I was so glad that they understood, look, we've tried this. We've tried all these different things. Now we're going to come together, because I think, as we say all the time, we are louder when we speak together. Like them coming together, they raised attention. The media did cover it. They went into that school board and testify. But what the parents are asking for is really basic. They're just saying, look, let's make it clear that schools can't hide information from parents. I mean, that seems like something everybody should be able to agree on, especially when kids are experimenting with something as important as their, gender identity. So they're also saying, look, if there's any kind of counseling with my kid before that happens, I'm going to know. I want to be able to consent to that. And then, of course, pointing out that there, the policies around sports and bathrooms and all the things that fall out from that. So it wasn't that complicated. And There's lots of school districts that have complied, that have fixed their policies.
Yeah. Hanover,
Virginia Beach, which is a major school system. This is not just, a little rural towns that are doing this. This can be done, is being done in significantly sized school districts.
Yeah, I will also mention Newport News, parents there, Speak Up Team there rallied.
Yes, they had a big win.
They had a big win with the school board implementing parental rights policies. Roanoke has done this. So it's not like the parents were asking Chesterfield to do something that's an outlier.
And we've pointed out, and it was pointed out at this event, there have been lawsuits. I mean, think about, first we know we had the incident of sexual assault in Fairfax. Virginia Beach, the lawsuit was part of how they ended up getting to the right policy, right? So we're just kind of letting Chesterfield know, look, you got to be aware if you're going to have these policies, you're opening yourself up to litigation.
Well, sexual assault, I think it was Loudoun County. And
did I say Fairfax?
Yeah, but
Fairfax does so many things wrong on gender.
Fairfax
I throw them under the...
Well, I'll just mention sexual assaults in Loudoun County and Chesterfield.
Yes.
But also Fairfax has that lawsuit from the student.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was confusing. A student's basically saying, look, you can't compel me to use certain pronouns and to have certain speech. So Fairfax has an ongoing lawsuit right now.
Yeah. It's really amazing how they think they can just block parents out, and I think they're going to find out differently. But let me just play a clip of Victoria and I summarizing some of these basic facts at the press conference.
It is time for Chesterfield County to do the same. Stop the delays and follow the law.
Nobody should be counseling our kids without parents' knowledge. We also want them to address that schools cannot constitutionally compel employees or students to speak words that violate their faith or their conscience. You need not only look around, go up to Fairfax. There's a lawsuit in play right now on this exact issue. Kids and teachers are not going to be told what they have to do with their own speech.
I just think it's so powerful that at that rally and in the testimony, we had so many actual parents telling their compelling stories. I mean, they're born and raised in the county. They're talking about their kids in the school and just powerfully demonstrating that this is, a widespread concern among parents.
Yeah, I wish we had time to share all of their testimonies, but I did want to just at least let our audience hear one little clip from this awesome mom. Her name is Maria. She has a daughter in middle school, and she's a military veteran, and she's bilingual. And I just thought she made a really compelling case for why they need to remove this holdover Northam policy and update it, comply with the law, and honor the Youngkin parental rights policies. So let's just hear her for a minute. This is an excerpt from her talk.
My family, like so many others, has been directly impacted by a culture that is constantly pushing sexual experimentation onto kids. In the past, I have appreciated teachers in our Chesterfield school system who have had open communication and relationship with me as a parent. But the policies currently in place create barriers that prevent that kind of open communication. Let me give you an example. Previously, when my daughter was only in elementary school, her teacher communicated to me about peer interaction she was having that allowed me to discover she was coming under inappropriate pressure by peers to engage in sexual experimentation that was inappropriate for her age. I am thankful to that teacher, and we need more of that open communication with parents, not less. I am also concerned about my daughter's right to privacy in school restrooms and locker rooms where students are most vulnerable. I know this as a mother and as a veteran who served in the United States Army for 20 years. Biological differences between males and females mean that allowing access based on gender identity rather than biological sex will compromise the comfort, privacy, and safety of young women in these spaces. Who will protect the rights of my daughter, who in similar situations has expressed to me her discomforts and concerns?
I am so proud of these parents. We all know it takes a lot of courage to get up there and publicly talk about in front of the school board, in front of the media, the whole community, what your family is experiencing. And these parents are doing that because they care about all the kids in the community, not just theirs. So they're stepping out and speaking up. And Maria told me that was her first time ever to speak in public like that.
Well, it's a big deal. And I think a lot of what doesn't even hardly come out is how uncomfortable these girls feel in the locker room when you're talking about the sports issues and the vulnerability. And it's because it's literally been stigmatized that if you even feel uncomfortable that you're exposed to a biological male in your locker room, that somehow you're bigoted or unkind. My goodness, that we're at the point where these girls feel afraid to even come forward and talk about it in any kind of public way.
That's an excellent point, Victoria. But I just want to bring up one rather humorous moment during this press conference, because there was one reporter there. Victoria was taking question and answers, because it can be intimidating for parents their first time ever doing a press conference. So one way we can help serve them is sticking Victoria up there to field some of the incoming and some of the more policy type questions that, it kind of takes a legal brain, policy brain to know. And so, Josh and Victoria help answer some of those. But there was this one reporter that almost kind of wanted to have a personal debate, it seemed like, with Victoria in front of a live audience. And but the funny moment is the parents, they were tired of all of this. So the reporter literally says, well, I'm not a parent, but, and then throws out this snarky question to the effect of, oh, come on, kids aren't really hiding. Do you really think kids are hiding things from their parents? Literally all the parents, the 200 people started laughing.
It just was so clear he isn't a parent because he acts like if you're, that you're going to have perfect children or that you're a perfect parent and, you should know everything that's happening in the life of your child. Yeah, we want engaged parents, but there's a reality that says, that everything is not always perfect. And I appreciate it.
Well, you're the parent of teens.
Yeah, I literally said, does anybody have teens?
Yeah.
Because, not to pick on my teens, but
yeah.
And this is, for millennia, teens have been hiding things from parents. And, hopefully they're rather harmless, but not in the case of gender identity. That's a pretty serious thing. And that's why when other adults are supposed to be part of helping shape your kids in the school system, them also hiding it is horrible. That's the point we were trying to make.
Okay, my second favorite moment from a humorous perspective in this press conference was when the same reporter comes back with, do you really think, no, teachers aren't really being told to hide things? And literally a teacher jumps out of the crowd and says, that's not true, I was told.
Yeah, it was great. I didn't have to say anything at that point because she had it covered. But that, I think, how naive of him to think that that's not what's going on if he really, truly...
I guess he really does think
it's hard to know. I don't want to question anybody's motives, but at this point in the debate where this has been under debate for years, the stories are out there. It's ridiculous.
Well, they
and
are.
I brought up SAGE, of course, which we've talked about many times. There are examples that we know of that are very public where teachers absolutely hid things to a child's detriment.
Okay, well, let me just give a brief update of the outcome of all of this. So right after the parents gave their, 5 or 6 parents up there testifying, everybody went into the school board right after and said the same thing directly to the school board. And I got to tell you, I was just devastated for the parents because the school board, after all that hours, they're sitting in there till almost 10 o'clock at night waiting on the school board's response to them. And they didn't get anything that was of substance, anything to the effect of, well, we're going to take this into consideration. So combine that with, we got good media coverage of the parents or of the rally, but they pretty much block out the parents' actual testimony. You'll just see clips of me and Victoria, but you don't see these amazing parents like Maria, which is so frustrating. And Victoria, I just got a comment. When we see this anger, which I do not endorse, or I don't think this is a Christian response. I'm just going to be really frank here. When we see people angry, flipping off the media, showing anger like they did at the Trump when he nearly got assassinated. Yeah. Obviously, that is not a Christ-like response when you're doing rash anger like that. But the place where that is coming from, I'm sorry, I just got to say, these parents are experiencing getting blocked by their government entity that's supposed to be representing them, and then the media creating that cocoon around the school board or government officials so they don't have to answer.
Well, and it's compounded by the those that support the existing bad transgender policy in the schools that had maybe a handful of people there, and they had like 3 people testify, and the media covered all 3 with statements that were the personal testimony of those individuals, but they won't cover the parents saying, this is what's going on with my kid. I'm a parent.
Yeah.
And so I think, and given there were 200 of us and lots of parents that spoke, it's just the way that they frame these stories is, when you are a part of it and then you see it, it's just so discouraging. And I do hope, rather than get angry, I just hope it reminds us that we are constantly being manipulated by the media, and people just need to know that, so that they're consuming with watchful, careful thought, not just taking in and believing everything you're seeing and hearing. Because what the headlines are, how the stories are framed, what's not being discussed in the media, it's real that they are not necessarily neutral actors in this whole culture war.
Yeah, you always have to use discernment and ask yourself, what is not being reported here? It's more what they leave out, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Well, let me just encourage everybody with a little personal anecdote coming out of this. So I was actually concerned that the parents would be discouraged, but I get a call the very next morning. All right, what's next? We are not going away. They're going to continue to hear from us. They were just more raring to go. They're not going to be ignored. So I'm not going to give away all that the parents are thinking about in this community, but I am going to say we will be hearing more from them. So remember, even when we're getting shut on these different fronts, we do have strength in speaking together and joining our voices together. Also, we need to be persistent, have that Wilberforce biblical mindset that we're not going to grow weary in doing good. Victoria, I'll give you the last word here.
Yeah, I'm just so proud of these parents. And again, the point we were making is just ignoring us over a year of these model policies, they're not going to go away. And just because they, again, seem to sort of ignore what was going on, they're just going to keep getting, voices in their ears. So proud of them.
All right, well, thanks for your support and hanging in there with us for the battle to defend parental rights and life in this state, and we will see you next time.